So now we've decided that our entrepreneur is going to start a donut shop. So we're all in this together at this point, and we've got to start putting everything together for our plan to say, what's it going to take to start up our donut shop? And we're going to come up with the name Nana's Donuts. And we'll talk about that later on and what our mission is and what we're trying to accomplish with that. But let's talk about what are we selling? We're selling donuts, right? That's pretty easy. But where are we going to sell them? And really, let's take a look at the market. What market are we getting into? And also, who is our customer? And those are two very separate and distinct items that we really need to do our homework beforehand. So at this point, hopefully in your business ideas and your business projects that you're working on for your plans, you're starting to think about who is the ideal customer? Who is that perfect customer? Who are my competitors? And we'll talk about in the next segment, what value do we have to add that we can get a competitive advantage above them? So first off, we're going to take a look at what is our market, right? So the market is just this big, never-ending space-time continuum. The market is people spending money, and we want to get a little bit of that money, right? Are we competing with iPhones? No. Are we competing with oil change services? No. So what we do is we start really, reining in, and it didn't take a lot of, rocket science for us to figure out the market is restaurants, right? But restaurants is very general, right? So there's a reason why we might choose to get a hamburger at Red Robin versus Burger King, right? They're both restaurants, but are they really truly competitors? So what we want to talk about is what are those industries? And we start really drilling down. What industry do we want to be in? So we start off with restaurants. We go from restaurants and we start looking at breakfast options, right? That's when we eat donuts, right? But maybe our donuts are a little bit special. Has anybody had a donut at 9 o'clock at night?
Yes.
Might be I have. It's sometimes the greatest thing I've ever had in my life. Pancakes for dinner, that right there is a restaurant idea by itself. So we start looking at breakfast options. We also start looking at donut shops. So the question is, we're opening up a donut shop. We are definitely in the donut shop industry, right? Are we going to be competing with Krispy Kreme? Can we take on Krispy Kreme? Huh? No. Why? They're too big. They're good. They figured it out. We're literally just going to make our first donuts in the kitchen this evening, right? Yeah, that's how they started, exactly. But now they have a whole machine, and honestly, part of the event for me and my children is to just go in and watch that machine run for an hour. So then we start looking at small specialty bakery areas. There's also pastry shops and bakeries. There's several of those around. And we might be not competing with just donuts. We might be competing with baguettes, biscuits, things like that. And we start narrowing it down and saying, this is where Nana's Donuts is going to play.
Are we wholesale or retail? Are we selling to restaurants, or are we going to be like a restaurant?
Well, that's a very good question, and now's the time to ask that question, because within that, I think right now what we want to do is, do we want to run a factory, or do we want to wear our apron and serve somebody a donut and go from there? You'll see in one of the interviews later on is actually one of my business partners, Kathy, is Sugar Handmade Gourmet Donuts. We started that company up 4 years ago, and that same question came at that point. And the big question was, do we want to run a factory, or do we want to run a retail spot? And I'll be honest, I've been a part of 5 or 6 different companies from this ground up. Everything from raising capital for a medical device company to running an engineering company. The first day we opened the donut shop, and I worked the register just to find out what it was, handing somebody a donut and getting their $3 for the donut and seeing the instant gratification on their face was the greatest feeling I've ever had in my life. And exactly. Well, not only that, being able to see what you're delivering the customer, but that's a very good question to ask at this point. So as we start looking at our market, we decide on where we're going to play in. So we start listing out all our competitors, and as you can see, I've written them down, and they're color-coded based on how we define the market. Applebee's is out there, Krispy Kreme, Jonah's Bakery, Gourmet Waffle Hut, Chick-fil-A, IHOP, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, and Jenny's Organic Patisserie. So we start going through our competitors. Do we really have to worry about Applebee's? Do we have to worry about IHOP? It's a breakfast option, but we start going there. One of the things that a lot of companies do, and they make this mistake very early on, and then they don't reevaluate later, is they think everybody is their competitor, right? So even with this, with Kathy, there's a part of her, because her donut shop also offers coffee. She thinks her competition is Starbucks, and we talk about that over and over. And I love any of my friends that start a business. We've talked about all the leaps you're just making mentally to make that leap, and you want to be as encouraging as possible. But I'll be honest, if I start and I do my best effort to start a coffee shop tomorrow, I'm not going to beat Starbucks. To get to that level takes time and patience and resources, everything we've listed out before. So we start going through all of these, and really any company that's solely focused and building a strategy on where they're going to go only has really 2 to 3 competitors. And you'll go to some of these larger companies, whether it's GE, and they'll still fight and say, no, these are all our different competitors. If your strategy is focused, you really know who your competitors are. So we start eliminating who our competitors really are. So a great example of this is McDonald's. McDonald's is known for many different things. Their Happy Meals, their burgers, but they actually have always been known for their coffee. So this goes back 10, 15 years, and Starbucks comes out, and they're like, oh, everybody loves Starbucks coffee. McDonald's, you better be worried. They're your competitor. And McDonald's said, no, we're not worried. They're not our competitor. All of a sudden, they started, Starbucks started offering sandwiches. And they said, okay, McDonald's, are you ready to step up to the plate and compete with Starbucks? And they're like, they're not our competitor. And people were, yelling at McDonald's. Starbucks start getting breakfast sandwiches in, and now coffee, breakfast, the whole industry is screaming at McDonald's, you are so out of touch, they are your competitor now. McDonald's said, no, you are not. At this point, there's a couple thousand Starbucks stores. One Starbucks put in a drive-in window, and McDonald's said, you are our competitor now, and we will do everything we can to not lose your market share. They were really focused and defined on what their market was and who their customers are. And from there, you build out your customer profile. What is the average age of your customer? What is the location? Is location important? For a donut shop, we're going to hope that location is important. We want it to be in a highly visible area. But have we been to good restaurants that were out in the middle of nowhere? How do they get us there? And how do they entice the customers? So the question is, how are we going to reach our potential customers? Put it right in front of their face, or make them come find us, but make sure it's accessible. And this is a big question we have, especially with e-commerce, and we have with all these shops online. So I could start a t-shirt company up tomorrow and sell it in the store, right? And it works or it doesn't work, but it really works in this general area. When's the last time you drove to Branson, Missouri for a t-shirt, right? Never, okay? So with that, I'm hoping on my local environment. If I create a retail shop online, where can I sell? Everywhere. The whole globe is my market. So why wouldn't we just do that? I'm more likely to get people walking by my store than to find me randomly on the internet. How many stores are on the internet? A trillion, right? Some good, some bad. So where am I going to play in that area? And then with that, we've also decided, we've defined what our markets are. But that's the next question. In Boxman Studios, even my first conception was like, oh, this is a great green area, green recyclable material, turning it into office. And as you heard Mr. Campbell say, Their whole thing is, no, they want new cutting edge creativity on the office space. They knew their market, they knew what they were going after, and the fact that it's environmentally free, environmentally safe and green is just an added bonus on it as well. And knowing once you're playing in this area, we even talk about clear collar a little bit. The question that was right at the beginning is that defining that market was, at the time, we put in a search engine, how many cervical collars are sold in the United States every year? And guess what? There was no answer. It required more and more research to find those. And then the question is, with a cervical collar that goes around your neck, that's put on you in a car accident, who is the customer? Right?
Lawyers.
Right, lawyers. Well, here's one thing. Nobody in here has ever been in an accident and said, hey, would you like to buy this Band-Aid? Would you like to buy this medical service? You're given what they have. You don't go to the hospital and say, oh, that's not my favorite gurney. I prefer the X Model C. And you go that route. Somebody else is making that. And so defining who your stakeholders and your customers are can be a little bit more of an exercise as we'll start developing once we go into our strategy.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/NexagyEducation or visit CasmerWard.com to catch up on previous episodes.